Canada.
British Columbia, that's right. I haven't been. I want to go. It looks beautiful. Is it beautiful?
It is absolutely beautiful. I came 33 years ago for one season, decided it was paradise, and never left.
And where from?
Australia originally.
Oh, wow. You disguised that accent so well. You speak Australian and our English.
I do, and I disguise it because I was raised in Japan in the international school system from the age of 6 to 16.
Look at the cultural diversity we have in front of us, everybody. Melissa Deely, the real deal. That's fun. You play with that a lot with your name?
I hear that a lot. I don't play with it a lot, but it's kind of fun when I hear it.
Yep. Yeah. Action Jackson gets old a little bit. But I try to entertain it for that. Especially though, it's really funny when people they think I've never heard that before,
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. Go you, let me not make you feel bad here for thinking you're the first. But anyway, let's dive into those resources. So again, you got such a depth of wisdom to all the things that you're doing with Girls Matter. I'm super impressed with what you're up to for that initiative. You're an integrative healing coach, practitioner. Again, I'm not going to get all the accolades right on that, but what 3 resources for other people out there who are building their visions, which ones do you recommend they turn to?
Well, I just finished reading a book this past weekend that was recommended to me, and it's called Half the Sky. And I absolutely loved it. It's a difficult read. However, it further affirmed to me that everything we are doing with Girls Matter is so needed in our world today. And Half the Sky, the title came about because it's talking about women hold up half the sky. And it's talking about oppression of women and girls in many developing countries around the world. It was written back in 2008. And as I said, it's a difficult read because to read what some of these women, the trauma that they have to go through, being held in cages, literally in brothels, and, broken until they acquiesce to giving up their body for someone else's pleasure, is horrific to read. And yet we need to know this is happening, because if we don't know it's happening, we don't take action. And throughout the book, they kept saying, education is what's critical. So when we educate a girl, we're empowering them to stand up and speak for themselves and to feel confident in themselves to speak back. And there was examples of that in the book as well, in one village where one girl had a university level education. And she was able to fight back against the bullies because she knew how to speak back to them and to give them a taste of their own medicine. And in the end, they ended up in jail and she ended up running the village. And there's just so many stories like that. And when women are empowered with education and given the family finances, they invested in their children, in their health, in their education. When men run the family purse in these countries, they're very often spending it on drink and their own pleasure. And so that is a very powerful book for anybody that is open to making the world a better place. Because one of the best places to start is by educating the other half of the population.
I love that. That is powerful. So this book is designed as a read for men, correct?
As well, absolutely.
Oh, as well. Okay. And of course
men
we got
and women.
Yeah. Okay. Educating. When I heard that, I got lost a little bit, but you're right. When you said educating the other half of the population, I took that to heart and my own personal responsibility. Like we've got to step up as men. But you're right. It is about educating the women too. And I'm so glad
educating women in the first world.
That again?
It's about letting women in the first world know what is happening in other countries around the world. Because as an example, when I named Girls Matter, I've had many people say to me, of course they matter. Why would you call it that? Or I've heard, why girls matter? Boys matter too. And my answers to that are, yes, girls matter in first world countries. They don't matter in developing countries.
Right.
And boys do. And that's why it's called Girls Matter.
This book, Tribal Leadership, not read commonly because it's a hard book, validates exactly what's happening with the name of your business. They say when your vision or mission is on point, people will argue with it. That's how you know you've got the right vision and mission, is when it creates debate. And I was like, wow, I never thought about that before. That's really profound.
I
So
haven't either, so thank you.
yeah, of course. I love that you highlight too the cause and a book associated with the cause. It reminds me of one of my favorite books was 3 Cups of Tea by Greg
Mhm.
Mortensen. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, another amazing book. And I used to have on my footer before the Water Project became the primary cause that we talk about. It was our Operation Underground Railroad. And I had an employee a long time ago who said, this is back in like 2015 or so, they said they weren't comfortable with me promoting that cause because it was too dark.
Mhm.
I was like, that's why. That's why I'm talking about it. That's why it matters. And it's interesting, these companies, again, I don't get into theatrics or the difference between like what did or didn't happen in either case, but Greg Mortensen's book, 3 Cups of Tea, was eventually met by a disgruntled board member who wrote another book called 3 Cups of Deceit.
Mhm.
Now our is also facing their own challenges and problems and legal circumstances. And, it's interesting. Like, I hope nothing bad has gone on in either of those scenarios, but it's so interesting how fast the world is to tear down,
Yes.
and how fast we are to attack somebody for doing something different or maybe not being perfect at what they do. And I just hope that those who do listen to this can take a second to think about, do we need to be quick to judgment in those circumstances, or can we focus on building with the light that we have, the way you are with Girls Matter, and doing something about it rather than just complaining and saying somebody else isn't doing enough? You've stepped up and done something about it. Do you have 2 other resources you'd like to share real fast?
I do. And just before I do that, though, I want to just add on what you've said, because we raise funds to provide menstrual supplies for our girls so that they can go to school every week of the month because they don't have anything.
Yeah.
And we have got feedback that we shouldn't be talking about such a topic.
Right.
And yet, every woman in the
There's
world has a
certain
menstrual
words
cycle.
that get shut down by the algorithm, right? There's certain words we
Exactly.
should know to talk around when we're talking about such matters, but when you talk about it from a scientific standpoint and from the standpoint of like truth, and you learn how to discuss such topics of women's needs, then yes, we do. We don't want to get shut down, though, of course.
Exactly.
But in the process, we can still have the conversations where people know what we're talking about, and we're not hurting children's ears, or offending
True.
somebody who doesn't want us to be grotesque. And again, I wouldn't call it grotesque, but in the certain environment, if the movie's R-rated and I know that, I can go into the R-rated movie and watch 12 Years a Slave.
Right.
There's so many different opportunities to learn and not be scared off by profanity or graphic or what we really need to understand so many people in this world face.
Exactly. Exactly. So, my other 2 resources that I love to share are more in line with my business and holistic health.
Okay.
And one of them is called Our Daily Meds. And
Mm-hmm.
it's written by Melody Peterson, who used to write for the New York Times about the big pharma industry. And when she started to see what was really going on, she quit her job, moved home to, I believe it was Iowa or Idaho, and started researching this book. And this book, too, was written in about 2008. And it also is a very hard read because it really highlights the corruption within that industry. And I, in my work, want people to know that there's more than one way to heal. And masking a symptom with a Band-Aid is never the solution.
No.
And I wish that our health industry was not a for-profit industry. It is a broken industry today because it's all about profit and it has nothing to do with human health. Now, acute care is excellent. However, when supporting people on their chronic health journey, it is failing us. And so that book is an insight for people to start to understand if they're just starting to figure out that maybe it's not working for them the way that they thought it should.
Yeah. I'll agree to disagree on the one point, which was the turning it from profit to nonprofit. I honestly don't believe at all that that's the solution, because that's cutting out a virtue, excuse me, a virtue of a resource. And what we choose to do with a resource is, in my opinion, the water can drown people. The water can provide, life to people as well. And so what we choose to do with it as leaders, there's adjustments for sure that need to be done. But I wouldn't box that in personally. I have to stand against that. But the resource sounds amazing. And I love that Ty Bollinger, for instance, of The Truth About Cancer, he speaks against the cancer industry. I don't know how much of what he says is true. I'm not a doctor. I don't profess to be, but I do look for people who have a more holistic approach to, there's not a one size fits all Band-Aid. There are different opportunities. And I wish I had known that, or thought through that more holistically myself before having a back surgery, that I probably could have avoided. So what's your third resource?
The third resource is a book called The Growth Mindset, or maybe it's The Mindset, by Carol Dweck.
I'll take a look while you talk.
And love that book. It talks about the fact that we all have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, and we can have different mindsets in different aspects of our life. And when we read that book, we start to understand what that growth mindset looks like and hopefully aspire into stepping into it. And I really love the concept of there's unlimited knowledge in the world. No one person can know everything. So you know what you know. You can, continue learning throughout your entire life. However, you also draw on the knowledge of other experts, and together you can lift everyone up, as opposed to the fixed mindset, which is, I know everything that there is to know, and all of you are wrong, really, in a nutshell.
Super well played. I mean, it's a great time too for our conversation, because here we are, agreeing to disagree, looking to explore. I'm like, man, I want to talk to you more about this off the call at some point too, because it's fun to explore that. And during Vision Pros, I'm like, man, I got to be a great host and stay focused. But to honor your uncertainty about the title, she has a book called Mindset, and she has another thing called the Growth Mindset Workbook. So you're right. They're both her aspects. Sounds like you benefited from both. So that's cool.
Yes, definitely. And what I love about the book is it talks about the mindsets in relation to business, in relation to sports, in relation to education, many different aspects of life. And it's a really easy read. And for me, I read it at a time where I really needed that information, and it helped me profoundly to navigate what I was going through, which I know we'll talk about shortly with additional questions that you have for me.
We will, for sure. Those of you who are listening in, Vision Pros, I hope that the people who leave this don't, right? I hope the people that are like, man, what am I going to get out of this? This is about breaking the poverty cycle for people who don't relate to me. And I don't think you probably think that harshly about it, but you probably have other things you want in life for you. These types of conversations are often the ones that lead you to the most profound answers for what you need to do as a visionary. There are parallels that will exist in this conversation. There are ways to apply this, and there are ways to take a look at this and see that, people like Melissa Deely are the types of people you can reach out to about your own visions that are probably budding, or you're cultivating, you're in the process of building it. And she's spent years and years working on these processes too. It's amazing what you can learn from people who've been building with principles for a long time. So we're going to dive right back in for her vision in just a moment. And I can't wait to explore your vision, Melissa. All right. Welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We'll be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder and CEO of First Class Business. I'm so excited to dive back into Melissa Deely's vision. I'm skipping the beginning of a very cool event here in San Antonio to be here because she's amazing. And I can't wait to teach you guys about what I've learned as well about Girls Matter, the foundation that she has. And we're going to be talking about breaking the poverty cycle, one girl, one family, one village at a time. And there's so much I could say about how much I believe in that. partly due to some effective brainwashing by my mom and 5 older sisters. And I say that, of course, with love and appreciation. The women in our lives are incredibly valuable and important. And when I need wisdom, it's usually who I go to, is some woman who has experience in whatever it is that I need guidance in. So let's definitely honor that as much as we can. I'm going to get out of the way in just a minute, but first I want to make sure to provide a few resources that I've come across. Some of them, one of them being another fantastic woman leader. Let's dive in with thelawspot.com. Melissa Gray came on this show as well, and I was apprehensive to bring her on the show because she's a lawyer, and lawyers tend to be kind of pretentious and condescending, and I never really feel, like they value what I have to think or say. And it's just kind of one of those uncomfortable subjects that we want to ignore in business. But she came on with this nurturing mindset and attitude, the ability to still have the poise and the experience of a lawyer, and understands that law doesn't have to be complicated. And she helps businesses simplify legal matters while also protecting them from threats that exist in the world. And having been through a $20,000 trademark lawsuit myself for a name we already owned, and seen Apple patent one of my softwares, I can tell you it would have been a far more prudent position. I would have been in a far more prudent position if I had been a wise steward and found somebody that I really aligned with in legal counsel. So if you do have somebody, stick with them. If you do not have somebody, then absolutely consider including Melissa Gray in your interview process. And what's cool is when you work with a lawyer who's also looking at not just how to protect you, but how to help you grow, well, it might turn into a positive ROI scenario as well. In addition to the Law Spot, we've got Recovery Unplugged. We were just talking about not only addictions. We were talking about drinking problems that exist. Well, there's all sorts of habits that exist that are vices. It can be drugs, alcohol, Netflix. It could be apps. There's a lot of distractions that are out there that keep us from living our best life. I am super impressed with what Andrew Sosin and his team have built with Recovery Unplugged. And I'm grateful that they designed this as an online platform post-COVID. So now anybody can get help with this music treatment and therapy. Now, you may not need this for yourself. You may have a loved one that might need, to get more out of life. Somebody who's just kind of in a funk or feels like, man, they're not really that plugged into life. Well, Recovery Unplugged gives you the opportunity to reach out and find out what can you do to help them and assist them. And then, of course, they can turn to this program as well and see what type of resource it can be for them. And I don't know, maybe it'll be the miracle cure, or maybe it won't be. But if there's at least one of you that this helps, then I'll be super grateful for that. I got to move over to the Water Project as well. Shame on me for not having that one pulled up. The Water Project. And look at that. Google's helping me. There it is. Oh, let's not click the ad one though. Let's save the Water Project a little bit of budget. Let's go right to the organic listing. These kids and how they celebrate water reminds me of my 4 kiddos on Christmas Day. And how excited they are about the gifts that they receive. Well, there's millions of people who do not have access to clean drinking water. And we have the opportunity to support them by giving to the Water Project. And maybe you give $5, maybe you give $500,000. Whatever you do end up donating, the cool thing is you get to see the outcome of these rural communities that receive it. They treat it like a crowdfunding process, and you get to see the effects, the generational impact that you're ultimately able to grant just by giving simply. Now, if you're in a position where COVID economics has really hurt you, you've financially, you just don't have the ability to give, my request is that you share this message with somebody who might be able to. You don't know if you'll be the catalyst for somebody who can fund 20 of these projects or who just contributes to one. No contribution is too small when it comes to people who need access to something as basic as water. So without further ado, we're going to talk about Girls Matter and this program that's been created by Melissa to help girls receive their education and to empower them to know how to provide a better life for themselves, for their communities, and ultimately uplift our entire world in the process. So without further ado, Melissa Deely, thank you so much for being here to share your vision.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Diving in a little bit more clearly into this cause I attempted to talk about, I'd love to know in your words, what is your vision for those that you serve?
My vision is to create a healthy planet. And what I mean by that is eliminate chronic illness, by showing people how they can heal themselves and how lifestyle is a huge factor in the dis-ease of the body. However, they have so much control over that. And all of that starts with education. And when we take that education a step further, we can also educate people in the developing world that currently don't have access to education. Because in educating them, we're empowering them to be able to live their best life, break free of poverty. With just educating the girls, we can literally bring countries' GDPs up significantly. I saw a stat years ago, which was one of the impetuses to me starting Girls Matter. And it was that if India could just educate 1% more girls, it would grow its GDP by $55 billion.
I believe that.
And so there's the answer.
I'm not one to believe stats, but that's a stat I believe.
And there's the answer. It's simple. It's not easy.
Right.
Because all of these countries charge for education. Where families are already struggling to earn $1 or $2 a day, put food on the table, et cetera, because of lack of education, families still have, 6, 8 children. Because of lack of good health care, children are dying far too young. And that's part of why they're having more children, because they know that not all of them are going to make it to adulthood. Yeah. And then it comes down to the costs of how do I pay for their education, or how do I put food on the table? And as the girls get older and into their teenage years, sometimes now they get married off, in many cases, actually. And the stat is that every 30 seconds, a girl under 18 is being married off.
Whoa.
Because they can't afford her education. They can't afford to feed her. They marry her off, and then she's someone else's problem.
Right.
And to me, that's so wrong, because they get married so young, then they get pregnant, and the greatest cause of death in girls age 15 to 19 is childbirth. Because their bodies aren't ready. And it's often happening in countries where they're not giving birth in hospitals and don't have additional care, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And so if we can educate the girls, that keeps them in school, so they're not getting married as teenagers, they're not becoming mothers as teenagers and repeating the poverty cycle of their mothers.
That's powerful information. And to be educated on this, and then to be able to go to your website and see what actions that somebody can take, that's super valuable too. So I'm grateful that you have that. We'll include that in the show notes so that everybody can see what actions they can take. Your vision it's so clear to me that your vision of service is also very tied to your personal vision as well. I'm going to skip that for now. We'll come back to it if we have time at the end. We're going to go into the next segment for the sake of time. And we're going to talk about what is your worst leadership experience that you've ever had?
This comes back to when I was in the corporate world. And it also ties back to the book, The Growth Mindset. Because in early 2013, a boss that I enjoyed working with was let go, and a new boss came in and filled his shoes. And this new boss that came in and filled his shoes was a female boss who seemed, from my perspective, to have a chip on both shoulders. Mm-hmm. And she was very much the fixed mindset person. In her viewpoint, if somebody knew more than her, that made her look bad. Therefore, she had to know more than everybody. And if it appeared that you knew more than she did, then she would have to put you down publicly.
I am great and you are not. Classic tribal leadership, stage 3.
And I will take your work and take it to my superiors and call it my own.
Yeah.
And that was a very difficult time. And fortunately, I wasn't in the same office physically, because I would have never lasted. And I'm a fairly determined person. And I decided, I've been with this company for 22 years. You've been here for 7. I'm going to outlast you, or at the very least, I'm going to get a payout. I'm not going to quit. Nice. And in the end, I got a payout because big fish bought little fish, and she let me go with great relish. However, I got the payout.
Yeah.
Having read the book, the growth mindset during that time period was extremely helpful to me, because then I understood the behavior and I could be more tolerant of it. And in some
Right.
ways, I kind of felt sorry for her that she felt she needed to behave that way, as
Empathy.
opposed to stepping into her own power. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a nicer way to put it, empathy.
Well, I get to color commentate. You get to say the big stories, and I just get to make these cool little golden nugget statements based on what you shared. And the world faces so much of that. The greater majority of the world has to deal with people like that all around them. And there's this constant fierce competition of dog eat dog. And usually I love this book, Tribal Leadership, and how it talks about the person who says, I am great, does not realize that their habits, their communication patterns are almost all built around also claiming, and you are not. And it's a
Right.
very interesting reality that once you've been exposed to the languages within the language, it's like, whoa, you can start recognizing how to shift. So thank you for that, because that is very powerful for those listening in. What would you say is your best leadership experience that you've ever had?
I was thinking about this, and I have a couple, fortunately. And I think really the one that I want to land on is my one of my current mentors, who has built a very successful business in health and wellness. And I did some of my training through his company. And as I went through that training, his mission was literally to have a health coach in every house.
Is this one to be revealed?
Pardon?
Are you going to reveal who this mentor is? I'm on the edge
Oh,
of my
absolutely. Dr. Stephen Cabral
Sorry, I got excited. Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Yeah, Dr. Stephen Cabral of Integrative Health Practitioner Organization, and also Equilife and Cabral Wellness. And his vision is to help everybody that goes through his training programs to become a health coach in every household and get more information out there about the myriad of ways that we can heal. And he also recognized that there is a client for everyone. We don't have to fight in competition. I will attract people to me based on the energy that I put out into the world. And that is different to who he will attract, et cetera, et cetera. And so he openly and willingly shared all of his resources at no cost and said, I've been successful doing it this way. Take everything I have and copy it and go out there and do this. I just want more people out there doing this. And that was so refreshing and enlightening to me as I went through that program, that I did exactly that. And I copied literally the text off his website when I first started until I figured out my niche and started to make it my own. And that was so helpful.
Yes.
And he's so right that we don't have to fight and squabble over clients, because there are enough clients for everyone, and we will attract who we will attract.
1,000% right. If there is such a thing, that was it, in my opinion. I love that in every sense of the imagination. If you were to compare, those of you listening, if you were to compare Vision Pros Live with Entrepreneur on Fire's website, the podcast, it's almost the exact same. We very much modeled what John Lee Dumas has done at Entrepreneur on Fire based on his own advice, and the advice of leaders like that. And in addition to that, we give our own assets out for free too. The Power Launch, our program, that's our infrastructure for our high ticket clients. For those who are educated on it and know what we do, we give anybody free access. If you want to and can build it on your own, go for it. Go do it. And this empowering people, it allows those who are in a centered position of, hey, wait a second, like I could go do it, but I want to work with you, Melissa. They can come forward. The rest can go be an ambassador and go talk about, or they can go steal it and take it, whatever. Like, I'm not going to lose anything by them using that information for their. There's 8 billion people in this world to help. I can't get to them all. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
So well done. I love that. I'm grateful for you sharing boldly about that too, because some people also may feel like, you know what, I like this Dr. Stephen guy, but I really want to work with a female. They're not wrong for saying, you know what, I want to work with Melissa because I relate to her. I want to work with somebody who also has blonde hair. Maybe I want to work with the guy who has curly brown hair. I've never heard that, but it's possible. There's just too much abundance to worry and spend a life stressed out about competition that's all in your head. So thank you for that. And that leads us to the big question, which if this was your last opportunity to share advice with the world, with visionaries in particular, what powerful lesson can other visionaries learn from your experience?
Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do something. We've all heard it. And what I know to be true is when someone says that to you, it is a reflection of their belief about themselves based on their passion, their education, their mission. They don't have your passion, your education, and your desire. And so they can't do what you can do. However, sometimes they just blurt it out of their mouth.
Yes.
Well-meaning as they are. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with them and their inability to see that dream or vision for themselves. And that's okay. It's not their dream or vision. So don't let them stop you.
I once again love that. I have allowed that to stop me many times in my life. And I don't know how many people can relate to that, but there was a friend before I learned the definition of friend many years ago, who said, when are you going to stop with all this washed up rebate Tony Robbins stuff? I was hurt. That I felt that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't stop right away, but I kind of slowly shifted in that. And, Passion Pro existed for a long time behind the scenes, but it wasn't until actually about 3-4 weeks ago before I was finally realizing, like, man, I really haven't stepped into that fully. And that is like who I am and what I do. And so these things can people's negativity, people's opinions of what we do, they can very much affect us. But the reinforcement of a leader like yourself, Melissa, helping us realize, like, no, we shouldn't let anybody tell us that we can't do something. And we have an opportunity, even if they have, to step back into it at any time. Did you ever let that defeat you? Just curious. Did you ever let that hold you back?
I'm going to say that I didn't, because as you were talking here, it took me back to a moment when I was about 6 years old. We just moved to Japan. I can see myself with my mother on the outside back deck of our house, looking out over the garden and the trees. And she was telling me that I was living in the most incredible era because I could do anything I wanted to do.
Wow.
And so I'm grateful for that. That's how I was raised.
Absolutely.
And so if someone said no to me, I would just find a way around that obstacle and figure it out, which is another great book by Marie Forleo, Everything is Figure Outable.
It's a good one. I didn't know she wrote that, but she is a great leader. So I can see that. Well, that's great. And again, those of you who don't have family and friends, who've uplifted you and have helped you overcome the negativity or the challenges of others, and look for creating the family and friends in life. Find people who are going to support you in the process. It is an amazing reality. There's a lot of people out there who do want to see you succeed with your visions in the same way that Melissa Deely is succeeding in hers. So let's take a few minutes to talk about breaking the poverty cycle, one girl, one family, one village at a time. What does that mean to you, Melissa? How can people get involved? What dynamics of that are, do you want to go down? And you've got probably 3 to 5 minutes to just guide us down the right path.
So what that means to me is literally coming back to educating the girls. And that's because an educated girl is more than twice as likely to ensure her own children have an education. So when we educate a girl today, it has a generational ripple effect into the future, which is incredibly powerful. And as I said earlier, school costs money in much of the world, and they can't afford it. And so when we can lend a helping hand, and it's so much less expensive than what university is in North America, for instance, when we can lend that helping hand to give these girls the opportunity to graduate from high school, to go on to a vocational school, to go on to university, they are not only creating a better life for themselves, but also for all of their family, all of the villagers, and future generations. And that's what I truly love about this work. So we fund girls to go to boarding school so that they're getting a good quality education. They're getting their meals, they're getting their accommodation, they're getting their medical care, they're getting their school uniforms, so clothing, etc. And they are well looked after when they're in the boarding school system. And that allows them to then go on to a vocational school. So we've just had one girl graduate as a seamstress, and she makes beautiful clothing. She also made about 100 caps and gowns for the preschoolers to wear at their graduation from preschool.
Oh, that's cool.
And I have these amazing photos of that. In fact, if you click to our solutions and you scroll to the bottom, I believe that's there. That picture right there is our first university graduate. Her name is Jane, and she graduated a couple of years ago from university, and now she is an administrator and a teacher in a school helping multiple preschoolers. And so it's not just about educating the girl, it's their give back to their community. So Jane, for instance, goes back to her community, which is a very rural village on the side of Mount Elgon in Uganda. And she helps the villagers with any kind of government forms that they need to be filling out, because many of them are illiterate. And so she'll sit with them and help them complete their forms, etc. And yeah, here are all our little preschool graduates in their caps and gowns that one of our Girls Matter girls made for them. We have, we're now also going into a little bit of microfinancing, because now that she's graduated from her vocational school, she doesn't have access to a sewing machine. And so we're loaning her the money in order for her to buy a sewing machine so that she can start earning an income and then pay us back. And then what she's paying us back will then be used to go towards another girl's education. And they value their education so much that they love to give back in many, many ways. We had another girl graduate last December, and she's in logistics. She actually started out in nursing, but during the pandemic, she couldn't do any of her practical labs, etc. So she switched to logistics on the basis that there's a lot of corruption. And her village community, just getting supplies to them is very expensive because people have to be paid off every step of the way. And so she's decided to go into logistics so that she can find a way to be able to get supplies to her village without all of the payoffs all along the way. And here you can see the profiles of all of the girls that we work with. We work with a group in Kenya called the Jali Sisters, Jali, and we're funding 18 girls through them that are from one of the slums in Kenya. Unfortunately, many of them have been raped. You know, they're living in the slums. They've had really hard times, a lot of trauma in their life. And school is a place where they, again, are safe, and it helps them on their healing journey. And meanwhile, the women of the slums are the ones that, through Jali Sisters, are being paid to make the menstrual supplies. So we send the money over to buy the raw materials, and then the women get the jobs of making them so that the girls can stay in school. And the women are also learning vocational skills as well, such as, you know, beautiful arts and crafts that can be sold on the internet to international markets, as well as how to run a market stall, etc. So there's a lot of education, even beyond just keeping our girls in school, that we're involved in. And we're moving into more projects because there's such a need. And so I'd love to talk to you more about the water project, because I know in our areas that getting clean water is really hard. There's a lot of typhoid, etc. And another project that I'm looking at is something called Hope Sacks, which they put around their cooking pots. So it's kind of like a tea cozy. They put them around their cooking pots so the food stays warmer for longer, so the fires don't have to burn for as long. They're not inhaling all of that smoke. And also because it's the girls who don't go to school that are sent off into the woods to find the sticks. And unfortunately, because men know the girls are off on their own looking for sticks. It's when they're also getting molested, and it's tragic. So if we can reduce the need for the sticks by using the equivalent of a tea cozy around a big cooking pot so that they don't have to have as many fires every day, as well as they're not breathing in all that smoke, it's a win-win for everyone.
It's huge. Wow. The little things in life that we take for granted and overlook, and the opportunity to be aware of how much of a difference we can make. You've made a phenomenal amount of difference in my life. I get to be a very small contributor right now to a very meaningful thing. My international politics teacher, I had a 0.33 GPA in college, by the way. For those who don't know, that is the F below the F. Like, I could not have done worse. And I only got that high of a grade because he chose to give me a C. And I hadn't done any of his papers. I attended his class. Like, I loved his class. And at the very end, I didn't go to the final exam, but he told me, Jackson, if you want to educate a nation, if you want to change a nation, educate a mom. Mm-hmm. And that hit me so deep. And I have no idea how he knew why that mattered to me. His intuition, his ability to understand the value of that, having my mom and my 5 older sisters, just a whole 9 yards, like, and him knowing that even though I wasn't good in school at all, he knew that there was something that mattered to me, like that I would take it and run with it. And so just being able to hear about your vision and understand it, being able to put the links to it, and everything we can do to support your cause and what you're up to, just make the ask, let us know. And of course, those of you who are listening in, we'll have on the landing page, we'll have the action steps. So if you want to get involved with what Melissa Dealey is doing as far as health and wellness goes, you'll be able to access those links. If you want to get involved in Girls Matter and help with the process of changing lives in ways that are incredibly meaningful on very, I would say, significantly low budgets of contributions, empowering women to create like those hats, those graduation caps. Imagine the amount of people out there as Melissa continues to tell her story and showcase that picture. Some people think the arts and crafts don't matter that much. But when you see a picture like that and you're able to inspire an entire audience of potential investors to throw down responsibly and to really fund something like that, the impact, the ripple effect is massive. And so we just have so much opportunity to do so many great things. And if you also have a vision of your own, something that you want to share that's important, and your vision is going to help and serve others, and there's another call to action on this is be our guest. We invite you to come on this show, share your vision with us, allow us to help you spread the word about what you're up to and be involved in these projects. At the end of the day, like, when my kids ask, hey, Dad, what'd you do for work? Or what are you up to? These are the things I get to talk to them about. Like, there's nothing better than being able to be involved in this. It doesn't matter if the person is Patrick Mahomes, and playing football for the best team ever, or if the person is Melinda Gates, so helping build a Melinda Gates Foundation, or Melissa Dealey. What's important is that if you're building something holistic, come and share it, allow us to contribute. And it gets me ultra excited. But Melinda Gates and Patrick Mahomes, if you heard this, we'd love to have you on the show as well. So without further ado, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in to Vision Pros Live. Melissa Dealey, thank you for your time and for sharing your visions. This was incredible.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me and allowing me to share this, because as I said at the very beginning, people need to be aware of the greater problems around the world so that they can choose to make a difference. I know that everybody would like to help in some way, and they just don't necessarily know how. And this gives them an avenue. And one thing, the reason I started Girls Matter versus contributing to another foundation for girls is, at the time, I couldn't find one that gave all the money to the girls. And that was really important to me. There's so many foundations where, the CEOs are earning multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or you donate and then you get beautiful cards and address mailing labels and things back in the mail. I don't want any of that. My board of directors were all volunteers, and we don't give you anything in return monetarily. We will send you girls' report cards. We will send you newsletters as to what we're working on, and we don't overdo it. You're not getting spammed. you'll get videos and letters from the girls if you sponsor a girl. And to me, as a donor, I would much rather have that than receive something back in the mail that I didn't need in the first place. And that's not what I wanted my money spent on.
Sure. To each their own in the process. With Oportunidades de Trabajo para Latinos, we don't just spend all the money on the program. We don't even have, we're not a 501c3. The legal stuff will be handled over time with the right stuff. But, it's whether that's your approach to business and how you grow it or not, at the end of the day, all of us have to survive in this world. All of us have to have funds that help us in some capacity or another. But as far as what you're building with Girls Matter, I think it's awesome. And I respect the way that you go about it, but I also respect the way that the Water Project or our others go about their good too. And
absolutely. And our vision may change over time
to do it. I hope that you all pursue it holistically. And as Melissa shared, that book on the mindset growth opportunity, be ready to mastermind and willing to look and learn. You know what? I'll circle back one more time to tribal leadership. One of the things that I learned in this that I hadn't quite grasped was the ability to align with people and the difference between alignment and agreement. An agreement meaning we're on the same page, we believe the same thing, versus alignment kind of meaning we don't necessarily see this the same way, but we still can appreciate and build together. That is an aspect of leadership that I'm striving to learn to dive more into. And I hope that, again, those of you who are listening, that you take these principles to heart, you learn from them, and you contribute to us in the comments. Let us know how we can continue to improve as leaders. And we will see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention.